Hey everybody, and welcome back to another video. We are doing the last video of this little section of videos. I don't know what you want to call them, but we've done our favorites from 2024. We've done our worst from 2024, and now we're here to do the most disappointing. Now, how is this different from the worst? Disappointing does not mean it's like the worst movie ever. It's just that when we were going into this movie, we were expecting way more than what we got, or we were expecting one thing and it went a completely other direction and it just wasn't working for us. So that also means that there's a good chance that we are in the minority of, some of these films as far as thinking it was disappointing or not really liking it. There's a movie that's on my list that honestly, many audience members loved. It just wasn't for me. So that kind of gives you an idea that there may be some movies on this list that you all enjoyed, but we didn't. So brace yourselves, I suppose. So we're gonna give you our top five. We're gonna start with number five, work our way up to number one. I will say what mine is, and then Sarah and I will talk about that movie for a little bit. Maybe Sarah can share some of her feelings as well. And then if Sarah's number whatever is different than mine, then we'll talk a little bit about her movie, unless it appears again in my list. And if it appears in my list again, we'll briefly talk about it with Sarah, but then talk about it more when it comes up with mine. However, some of our lists in the past have been very different, so maybe that won't even happen. Who knows?
I'm sure we'll have some overlap.
I think we will because there's some that were definitely very disappointing. Um, all right, let's kick it off. My number five that was most disappointing was Craven the Hunter.
Mhm.
So I know what Craven was supposed to be, and based on the trailer, I thought what was in the trailer was going to be like the first 30 minutes of the film, maybe kind of just setting up who he is. Um, but they actually never really got to Craven as the Craven that I know who he is until like the last 30 seconds of the film, and that's just not okay. And so that was a major disappointment for me. The editing was terrible, major disappointment. But at the same time, it's kind of like what was I expecting with all the other bangers that came out right before it, right? Like Madam Web, so and Venom, The Last Dance. I don't know. Sony's losing it.
That one is an honorable mention for me, or dishonorable mention, however you want to word it. It didn't quite make my list. I wasn't as disappointed as you were in that film, just because I didn't remember the background of who the character is supposed to be, so I was kind of just taking it as face value for what the movie showed me. But the editing was awful, and the um some of the plot lines were heavy plot armored, I'd say. So it was disappointing. I wish it would have been better. I was really excited to see that film, but it did fall short. But it did not make my list. My number five is actually Founder's Day. We were coming off a high from the Thanksgiving movie. This was a movie that was advertised to be very similar in nature. They looked really similar, so I was like, oh yeah, this is gonna be like another Thanksgiving, but like a little bit different. Like this is gonna be great. And it fell really flat. It did not hit any of the expectations that I had. I think if I hadn't seen Thanksgiving a couple months prior, or however many months it was before, I wouldn't have been as disappointed because I just would have thought like, oh, that was just a bad movie. But because they came out so close together, it made me have way higher expectations for that film, and it wasn't very good.
Yeah, it was kind of like the Temu version of Thanksgiving, unfortunately. Um, Very disappointing to say the least, but also it just kind of seems like that was a movie that was made to try to, also shine in the spotlight with Thanksgiving, but really it just got kicked off the stage with tomatoes thrown at it. So, terrible, terrible movie, and definitely disappointing, especially if you're coming off, like you said, coming off of Thanksgiving. It looked kind of similar. So maybe this will be really cool, but no, not even close. All right. My number four movie is Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. Now, why was this movie super disappointing to me? It was disappointing because, number one, I saw the trailer for this movie probably at least 20 times. It was advertised all the time. And the trailer showed, the scene on the beach where like this wave of cold was coming to the land, and then, like the park gets frozen, all the people are running away trying to, you know, not be frozen themselves. And so for me, I was like, oh my God, that's gonna be like the opening of the film. It's gonna get things going. It's gonna be a fun ride the whole time. And what ended up happening is that we went to go see the movie, and I waited and waited for this scene to happen. And I looked at my watch when this scene came up, and it was roughly about, an hour 20 minutes ish into the movie. Like it was really late into the movie. So that means the whole first half of the movie, it was just the Ghostbuster people kind of dinking around a little bit. They weren't doing very much. And I feel so bad for what's his name? The Wolf. His last name is Wolf. He's from Stranger Things.
I want to
I
say his name's Mike, but I think that's his name in Stranger
or
Things.
Matt, maybe. Finn. Finn Wolfhard.
Hmm.
Um, I feel so bad for that dude because he's a great actor. He's becoming a big actor, and I feel like they just gave him utter crap to do in this movie. His whole plot line was just to mess with a character that was going to be just a major Easter egg the entire film. And so he was done dirty. The whole first half of the movie was just basically high school drama. And then when we finally get to this big baddie for the film, the baddie finds the Ghostbusters immediately. I mean, yes, finds one person for a little laugh, the dude that owns like the marijuana store, and then finds the Ghostbusters. They duke it out, movie's over. And so I think that was super disappointing. There was really no true tension established in the film just because they basically had to rush through the ghost part of it. They spent way too much time, with us trying to care about the younger Ghostbusters and this kind of like love interest with a ghost that when it came to actual ghost busting time, it was, I was already pulled out of the film and probably the majority of the audience. But I feel like you felt differently about Ghostbusters.
I did enjoy that movie. I gave it a 9 actually when we did that review. I don't know that I still feel as strong just because, once you take time to really digest a film, you can kind of maybe level out a little bit of where it landed. But I still really liked it. I don't think I'm nearly as harsh on it as you were. It wasn't really disappointing to me when I saw the film, which is kind of the big thing of what we're talking about here. But there are two things that I will say were mildly disappointing. One being there was a scene in the trailer that never happened in the movie.
That's
I don't
right.
I don't
You,
remember exactly what it was. Wasn't it when the dad was on the roof?
yeah, that's like the comedic moment of the trailer where like the four of them are on top of the roof and then he says something stupid and then the trailer ends. That was never in the movie, and so it's just like really
Yeah.
like
So that was
I
definitely
didn't want to see that scene anyways, but at the same time, it's like what else was missing?
yeah. So that was definitely a disappointing spot was just, if it's gonna be in the trailer, it should be in the movie. And the way that the trailer starts, or maybe it doesn't start, but part of it is with Patton Oswalt saying, for the first time ever, New York City froze over, or something like that. I don't remember the exact line, but it really gave me Day After Tomorrow vibes. If you haven't seen that movie, check it out. I really enjoy that movie. Which that alone was a horror-ish type movie, just from the cold, not even with ghosts. So I feel like they could have stretched that movie a little, the Ghostbuster movie a little further to be more scary, even just from the cold and freezing.
Hmm.
So I can see where you're coming from that.
Yeah, like what kind of special ghosts would come out that are kind of like associated with snow and ice, right? I mean, it when you think about it, oh, ghosts maybe probably don't have temperatures, but ghosts don't come out like this anyways. It's all made up. It's all for fun. Just do something creative, not, you know, do what another very disappointing movie on my list did, where the first half of the movie we're just watching a high school drama, and then the second half of or when we finally get to the part where I want to see it, then the movie's over. So if
Yeah.
you've watched our reviews, you probably know what that movie is.
My number four was Venom: The Last Dance. I we've talked about this movie time and time again. The I really liked the first Venom. I liked the second Venom, and this one just it was a long journey to go nowhere and to do nothing and then have one somewhat epic battle at the very end. But it just the long journey wasn't worth it for the payoff in the end. I don't know.
They
It had some big names, but there just wasn't much to the movie. It was just so basic.
they did literally go to the middle of nowhere by the end of the movie. But yeah, that one's not on my list, but I would also say that yes, that was a disappointing movie, especially coming off of the second one. And, you know, when are we going to connect this to Spider-Man? That would have been a beautiful time to do so. Just end the trilogy. Well, especially because at the end of was it No Way Home, we see him get blipped back into his, normal realm. But wasn't it some of the symbiote like left behind or something? So there's this major cliffhanger about some sort of connection to Spider-Man, and then they just ignore that the whole rest of the way. And so terrible, very disappointing, especially with what they decided to go with. It was basically um, him walking, seeing what he runs into and how he reacts to it, and then, oh, we end up at some sort of factory with a whole bunch of venom type creatures, and now we can duke it out. And so, disappointing.
That dance scene with the convenience store lady at the
They
top of one of the
lose it.
penthouses, that was abysmal. That was just atrocious, no reason. It was ridiculous to be ridiculous, which normally I love, but this just didn't make any sense.
Well, right, because he even said, if we activate like the Venom suit, then it creates a tracker. So why would you do that? You're tr literally trying to hide in a hotel, and then you're like, "Oh, dance sequence! Oh my God, how'd they find us?"
What's your number three?
My number three, and it pains me to say this because I was really looking forward to this movie, is Beetlejuice. Um, I was looking forward to Michael Keaton back in action. I was looking forward to the next generation of Beetlejuice with Jenna Ortega. They had most of the returning people coming back. They had Willem Dafoe on there, and although we didn't know what his part was at
I
the moment,
hated his character.
I think almost everybody did. But even though we didn't know what his character was, the idea that Willem Dafoe was a part of the project, very exciting. But once we actually saw the movie, it just kind of felt like, probably like a one-off episode that would appear for the holiday, like a holiday special, like Star Wars, where it really didn't seem like there was a point to it, but they tried to make it seem like there was a point to it, but it was so bad. And I feel so bad having to say that because, again, I really enjoyed the original, but the second one was not good.
This is number one on my list. This was probably the one I was, out of all of these movies that we're talking about disappointments, this was the one I was looking forward to the most. And it really did not hit its mark. Like what you're talking about, it seems like a TV show episode. It's
Hmm.
because the teenager gets into some trouble and then the family has to bail them out.
Yeah,
Now
like
let's turn it
if
into a movie. Like
it
that's not
feels
really
like
movie quality.
it feels like it should have been a direct to streaming type movie. But
Yeah, I can see that.
because everybody was back, the studio was probably like, yo, we got everybody back and we got Jenna Ortega. This is gonna make bank. And it's just like, I don't know. After those first preliminary people go through and the reviews start to come out, then that money's gonna tank.
But I mean, it did make decent money. I know a lot of our friends really liked it. It just, for me, I feel like there was so much potential with other ways it could have gone. Even with sticking with a similar storyline, but focusing on other aspects of the film that they chose not to focus on. And I definitely would have cut Willem Dafoe. I love the dude. He's great, but his character was awful. It added nothing. It
I would
didn't
have
do anything to make the film better.
I would have cut his character and I would have cut the female like villain because she really had no point either.
Beetlejuice's wife.
Yeah.
Yeah. She was meant to be creepy and she just I don't know. She wasn't nearly as scary as she should have been, I think.
Well, it basically was, she's trying to find Beetlejuice this whole time. And then, we see throughout the movie that he's kind of freaking out about it. Oh my God, she's gonna find me. But when the movie comes to an end, basically what happens is the movie was like, oh crap, we forgot to tie this part of the plot together. So she just enters the scene, they kill her within like 30 seconds, and then they're like, oh great, thank God we took care of that. And then they try to move on. So stupid.
Yeah.
What was your number three?
Oh, my number three was Mufasa the Lion King.
Which,
I
before we go any further, that's my number two. So
oh,
Sarah's number three is my number two. So we can talk about that at the same time.
perfect. Yeah, I didn't think about it from the trailer, but you can gather from the trailer that Scar is talking about always wanting a brother, which means that in this version of the film genre, they are not brothers. And so he has no real entitlement to the throne like he does in The Lion King. And the whole reason why he wants Mufasa and Simba to be gone is so he can have his entitlement to the throne, right? And so by not having them be brothers anymore, it just ruins the entire rest of the plot line that both the animated Lion King and the live action Lion King stuck with. Now, if the live action Lion King didn't have that same plot and maybe this one lined up with that, like, okay, I guess then it's like an alternate universe, but that's not the way it worked out. And so it's kind of like they're just trashing the original Lion King, and I really don't like that. And take that story element aside, the movie itself I didn't think was that interesting. It was a really long journey with not it was really dark and depressing, but at the same time it wasn't. Like there was a lot of death, but there wasn't any like tension really throughout the film. It didn't the music just didn't hit the way that you would expect a Disney classic film to hit.
Unless it was a song, like a derivative of a song from the original film. That's the only time that that music sounded really good.
Yeah. What did you it was on your list too, so what do you think?
Well, I feel like I don't understand how this is so hard. And Disney didn't learn it from Star Wars, and they clearly haven't learned about it, from this movie. And that's that there is written material that explains all this stuff. All you have to do is take that book, make a film adaptation, and make money, and then everybody's happy. Not only is your audience happy, but you as a filmmaker get to make money off of that book. The material was already written for Mufasa. There's already an established lore for Mufasa's upbringing with Scar. All he had to do was make that movie, and that's actually the movie I thought I was going to be getting. I didn't pick up on the brother thing of being adoptive from the trailer because, if you have a kid and then you find out you're having a second kid, that kid will probably say, "I've always wanted a brother." But
Good point.
at the same time, like the when they made this movie, they're like, all right, where we want to make a prequel about Mufasa, but our some of our funny and best characters from The Lion King won't exist. So how do we do that? Oh, we're gonna take those characters and we're gonna make sure that they're telling a story. And then, when things seem somewhat interesting, we're gonna interject these characters and break up, the momentum of the film so that we have to restart every single time. It's kind of like watching, I don't know, 4 or 5 20-minute episodes back to back to back, and then Pumbaa shows up when you can go to the bathroom. So then the movie just didn't flow well, the songs didn't hit. And like you said, ultimately it's lore breaking, which is so stupid. It's like this is a children's movie story. How hard do you think they did it because they think children are dumb? Like they won't be able to pick up on the political stuff that we did?
I think they just wanted to have an interesting story, and if they started as brothers from the beginning, they wouldn't think it was as interesting. It adds a bit of drama to it, I guess.
I don't know. I find it so interesting that like Lion King is such a huge property of theirs, and it's not like it's Star Wars where there's a ridiculous amount of stuff that you'd have to think about as far as the lore to make everything consistent. Lion King only has a couple movies. It has a TV show that Disney has currently been making, probably a handful of books, and that's about it. So it's not that hard, especially since the exactly what they wanted has been written. I don't know. It is not a Disney movie I will watch probably again. And that's sad, especially because I love The Lion King. I will stick to the original and Lion King 2, Simba's Pride. I love that movie quite a bit. I wish that was made into live action instead of this.
Yeah. One last thing to note about this too, about why it was such a disappointment for me is I wanted to be invested onto why Scar was such a villain because he's so creepy and villainous in the original movies, and we really didn't get that. I could see why he was upset in the film, but him turning into the villain that he is, it just didn't seem super believable, and how he got his name was even more pathetic. I don't agree with it at all.
He was a baby the entire film of Mufasa until he had to grow a pair and, switch teams. So, yeah, that's definitely not merited at all either. But that was your number three and my number two.
Yep.
So, what is your number two?
My number two is Joker Folie à Deux. So this was another one that we were really looking forward to. I mean, that's the topic of the day, right? Is movies we were really looking forward to that just fell flat. I was worried with it being a musical that it wasn't gonna maybe necessarily blend as well as the first Joker movie, but the first Joker movie was awesome. I loved it. And
Yep,
knowing who the
I re
cast members were,
I rewatched it before we went and saw this one, and that's kind of what hyped me up a little bit extra. Was I was like, man, this movie was good.
yeah. I take it this isn't number one on your list.
It is not. What I will say about Joker 2, though, is I kind of heard some grumblings before we saw it that it just is not a good movie. And so I set my hype a little bit lower going into it. So although I think it's one of the worst movies of 2024, I don't really think it's the one of my most disappointing because I kind of set myself up to not be as disappointed by knowing that people were already saying that it wasn't going to be very good.
Yeah. One of the things that I think you said in our movie review for this film, and all of our movie reviews are on the channel if you want to go back and take a look. There's a playlist with them. But one of the things that I think you said about this one is that it wanted to be a musical, but it was shy about it. And so the
Yes.
musical numbers were like little hints at being a musical number without being a full out song or like really, diving into actually singing more than just two lines. And I feel like that really hindered it to not be committed to being a musical, but singing enough that it made it awkward.
Yeah, I feel like if it would have been a dedicated musical and they went for it, it probably would have been a good movie. But yeah, that was little analogy that I was using was that it it wanted to try something different. It was too shy, so it came off as very shy, and it just never really hit. It's kind of like, when I just want to imagine like American Idol, where like some of those contestants just kind of were shy at first, and then the people were like, "We know you can sing, let us have it," and then boom, they're just amazing because they come out of that shell. And unfortunately, I don't think this movie is going to be redeemable in that sense because number one, the way it ended, and number two, I think a lot of people have dropped off of this movie, and honestly, I think the only reason why it made so much is people couldn't believe how bad it was going to be, and so they went and saw it. But that's just
Yeah.
me.
Uh,
So,
The last thing I want to say about it being disappointing is just the casting of it because the casting was really exciting. And I know that both Joaquin Phoenix and Lady Gaga are excellent singers. And so I had the expectation of, all right, they're going to sing and it's going to sound great. And then it just didn't. And I'm not saying that they sung bad. It's just, I think the writing was really bad.
that it was boring.
Yeah. So
So,
what
can you
was your number one?
can you remind me again what your 1 through 5 was? Because I know we said, some of mine were in yours and whatnot.
Yep. So my number one most disappointing was Beetlejuice, Beetlejuice. Number two was Joker, Folie à Deux. Number three was Mufasa, the Lion King. Number four was Venom, the Last Dance. And number five was Founder's Day.
So my guess is those must have been like super hyped for you because I'm surprised this last one isn't on your list. But my number one, and again, this does not mean it's the worst movie of the year. It's just it was very disappointing to me, and I know tons and tons of people really like this movie. My number one most disappointing movie was Wicked. I felt lied to about this movie 100%. Um, when the title went on the screen and it dropped and said part one, I was like, oh no, what's gonna happen here? Now, don't get me wrong, the start of the movie was strong. I really liked that sequence when they had like the big Wicked Witch character come out and they burned it alive, and everybody's, super happy about it. But then they go back to explore, how Glinda and the witch were friends, and the majority of the movie is just them trying to become friends, boo-hoo about the Wicked Witch. I just feel like if the musical itself is within a 2.5 hour, maybe 3 hour span, that tells you how much fluff they put into these movies. And unfortunately, because this one, I don't know, was like 2 or 2.5 hours long. Unfortunately, with this movie is that the part that I thought was the most interesting was like the last 15 to 20 minutes of the movie. Everything else I did not give a rip about just because I feel like they just wanted to be like, here's another reason to feel sorry for the witch. Here's another one. Here's another one. They're misunderstood. Here's another one and another one. And it's just, she's the wicked witch of the. And how in the world is the main plot that she wants to be a animal protective person, but then
Animal rights activist.
in the main movie, she threatens to kill a dog. Like that doesn't make any sense. So pick a lane, people. Pick a lane. It's either the yellow brick road or it's the red one that leads to wherever that goes.
This one was pretty disappointing. I had heard by several people ahead of time before we saw it that it was part one. And so that was not a super surprise to me when we saw this film.
Even to this day, though, on IMDb, there is no part one anywhere. It says Wicked. Oh, and I don't mean to interrupt you. So after we saw this movie, I forget what I went to Target for, but I was looking at the book section at Target. I think I was like gift shopping for a nephew or something. And I saw the Wicked book. And so I went down, picked it up. The Wicked book had the poster from the movie. So I was like, is this the movie adaptation? And I'm flipping through the book and I went to the end. I was like, where's the wizard? Where's the part that is basically the written part of her singing, the defying gravity and all that stuff. The end of the book was how the second movie is gonna end. So that was a bunch of bull too. Like, how do you make the book? You slap the poster on the cover of the book, and then that's not even represented. It doesn't make sense, right? One of
Yeah.
them has the movie poster and is what it was supposed to be. The other one has the movie poster and is like, we're gonna go halvesies on this because we want to make more money. Just be honest, people. They did it because they want to make more money. They didn't make it because they wanted to flesh out these characters.
Yeah.
Continue.
I it didn't make my list for a handful of reasons. I don't know that I had many expectations of this film. I knew that it had a big cultural following, but so did Frozen, and I hated that movie for a long, long time because it just was so in my face. And now I actually kind of like it, but that's because the hype has died way down and we're like, 10, 15 years down the road or however many years it's been. I don't know since the first Frozen movie came out. And so when a movie is so hyped like that and has such a big cultural following, it makes me really nervous. And so I was not super excited to see this film. I wanted to see it for the sake of I knew everybody else was going to, but I didn't have that hype myself because it made me really shy and nervous about the film. I didn't like it either. I thought it was really way too long. I thought it was really boring. I haven't seen the musical, and I kind of think that the musical might be better fit for me and maybe even for you because it's so much more condensed that gets rid of all that bull crap.
I would
But
much rather go see the play. Musical, sorry.
if you're somebody who likes the musical, and you are into Hallmarky type high school drama type movies, this is definitely going to be right up your alley. But that's not really what Jeremy and I are into, and so it just it wasn't one that I overly enjoyed by any means. I was super bored. I was falling asleep, which is not normal for me. I really wanted to leave, but we were with family who I knew was really excited and they loved the movie. And so then I thought, well, if I didn't like it and they loved it, what's wrong with me? But I don't know. I think it didn't make my most disappointing because I didn't have that hype behind it because it was so overhyped by everybody else that it made me nervous. And so it's just not on my list for that.
So the other thing I don't understand with this movie, and this is kind of like outside of the movie itself, it's like the behind the scenes, but this movie won an award for like outstanding box office achievement. This movie didn't make nearly as much money as some of the others this year, and I don't understand where the heck that award came from. Um, because this movie was just, it's no different than like Twilight, Harry Potter, Star Wars. Like it's in pop culture. It's Wizard of Oz, right? It's not like this is some sort of groundbreaking movie about, um, j just some political topic. Like I feel like this movie is getting so much unnecessary attention that it doesn't make any sense to me. Inside Out 2 blew this movie out of the water as far as how much money it made. But Inside Out 2 never probably didn't get a one look at from uh audiences and stuff. I'm gonna
That's
look
probably
up.
just because it's animated.
Could be.
While you're looking up what you're looking up, one other thing that made me not super hyped for this film and made me more or less not want to see it was Cynthia Erivo's attitude about the fan
Yes.
poster that was made. So if you aren't aware of this, I'll just go over it super quick. There was Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande, the two main leads. They kind of recreated the main uh musical poster for Wicked, right? With the whole like, let me tell you a secret, and she's got the red lips and the hat and stuff. Except in their recreation, Cynthia Erivo is showing her eyes, which is not done in the musical poster, and her lips aren't red, or which they are red in the musical poster. And there was a couple other minor tweaks of like the hand position of Ariana Grande's hand and stuff, and how close she was to telling whatever secret or whatever she was telling. So there were some tweaks like that. There was a fan edit that was made, and Cynthia Erivo whined and cried about it on social media about how disrespectful it was to, for her creative choices. And honestly, she was just kind of a baby about it. If you're in pop culture, there's going to be fan art. And it wasn't like something hateful. It was just making it more like the original poster. And so I really disagreed with her choice to be so strongly outspoken about hating the culture of the people who are supposed to be her fans, that also made me really not want to see the movie.
Yep. So what I was looking up was some box office numbers for different things. There are five other movies that outperformed Wicked. Those five being Inside Out 2, which we said, Deadpool and Wolverine, Moana 2, Despicable Me 4, and Dune Part 2. All of those movies, what was the margin? All of those movies beat Wicked. Let's see. Dune was
You
not
talking
very,
global or national sales?
those are the same thing. You mean nation?
Yeah, global or national, like the nation, just the US.
Oh, it's the whole world.
Okay.
So Dune barely beat it, but all the other ones destroyed it. And when you think about box office achievement, I'm very curious on how that's measured because the movie's budget was what was it like? What was Wicked's budget?
I don't know, but I gotta say it probably has something to do with this movie having a double female lead
Could
because
be.
it's kind of unheard of for a film to do that well with a female lead, let alone two female leads.
So the Wicked had a $145 million budget according to IMDb. Um, it made roughly $711 million, which is a significant amount of money. Don't get me wrong. But if we're talking about how much money a movie brought in, there's five other movies that beat it. If we're talking about percentage of turnover, I hate to tell you this, but I think Terrifier 3's got anybody beat this year because of how much money that movie made off of this much budget. So I just don't understand. I don't understand the hype. I don't understand the thoughts that went into making like the different decisions that went into making the movie. And so it's a very, very disappointing movie for me because it is not what I thought it was going to be. And I know there's a part two to come out. I am looking forward to part two because I think what I want is going to be in that part two. But it also makes me wonder what other things are they going to fluff here? What are they going to change? And what are they going to focus on? You know, I don't know. I think I should just end my rant.
We'll have to wait and see. So, why don't you run down for me what your top five were?
My top five, number one was Wicked. Number two was Mufasa. Number three was Beetlejuice. Number four was, oh, Beetlejuice. Number four was Ghostbusters, Frozen Empire. And then number five was Craven the Hunter. All movies that are huge in pop culture. It's just so sad that they did not live up to my expectations.
Yeah.
I will say the Frozen Empire Universal Horror Nights uh, house, in my opinion, was way better than the film. I was able to experience the cool stuff within 5 minutes, and then I got to leave. Um,
Uh,
all right. Well, If you enjoyed this type of video, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications and check out our other videos where we rank the top 5 best and the top 5 worst movies of 2024 in our opinions. Drops a like if you like the video and then drops a comment letting us know your thoughts on your top 5 most disappointing movies and also your thoughts on our top 5. There's a good chance you probably disagree, but I don't know. Some people are wrong. And then, as always, everybody, thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.